An entire world is ready
for you to start your career teaching the path to wellness.
Mastering the science of mindfulness.
And the art of coaching.
To help clients achieve mental, emotional, and physical betterment of life.
Through movement,
nutrition,
recovery, and regeneration.
Because impacting one person impacts a family.
Impacting a family impacts a community.
And impacting a community impacts the world.
Become an NASM certified wellness coach.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of the Master Instructor Roundtable. I'm Regional Master Instructor Marty Miller, here with fellow Regional Master Instructor, dear friend, Miss Wendy Batts. Wendy, how are you?
I am good, Marty. How are you?
Good. As you know, I just got back from overseas in Egypt, working with all of our amazing NASM professionals over there. So a little spoiled. Got to see some amazing culture, amazing people. And guess what? They are loving NASM overseas.
I love it. I was extremely jealous. I do follow you on Instagram and Facebook, Marty. And yeah, thanks for rubbing it in a lot.
Hey, you got some cool trips coming up. So
I do. So I'm going to be heading to Dubai in about a month. So I cannot wait. It's going to be exciting.
I'll be jealous.
Yeah. Well, I'll be sure to post a lot of stuff. So you guys need to follow me so you can actually be a part of Dubai with me. So I'm excited about presenting for their conference. So it'll be very cool. Yes. Has nothing to do with what we're talking about today. However, it is exciting stuff. And, you know, Marty and I, because he actually got the opportunity to go to URSA, I did not, because I was home with my little man while my husband went to URSA. And I know that there were some amazing products. You got to do a lot of talking and meeting with some individuals, Marty, as well as people that we talk to pretty often in the industry. And there's some really cool stuff that's, you know, that was launched. I mean, it's not necessarily like brand new. It's not anything that's like earth shattering. However, some of these tools, when you think about what it all can do, could really enhance some of your clients' workouts and maybe even your own. And so I know Marty and I were kind of talking about some of our favorites, and that is what we are going to discuss today on the Master Instructor Roundtable, new fitness tools.
Yeah. So as we go to the next slide, one thing that, you know, I'd like to kind of say right from the very beginning is, and I said this actually last week when I was in Egypt, and I think they really appreciated how we kind of separated is NASM is tried, true, and tested. It is a model. It's an evidence-based performance model that takes you from movement assessments through injury prevention with our corrective, through stabilization, through strength, through power. It's your toolbox. So when we look at the CES, the CPT, the PES, that is, you know, CPT is your toolbox. The CES, PES is kind of like your extended toolbox. From that's my training system. That's how I always look at my program design. From there, I will grab tools that I like very much to elicit those responses within those phases. But what I have seen in the industry, and this goes back to what we saw at URSA early in the year, Idea World, a lot of people get enamored with a tool and they try to use it for everything. So we want to talk about being diverse, but understanding how to look at all these tools within the toolbox that is your OPT model.
And I think, you know, and we're going to talk about this actually on a slide, but to your point, Marty, there are so many different modalities that are out there. And, you know, it can, you know, they do serve a purpose and they are different. And sometimes adding different things causes more challenges for your clients. And so therefore they, you know, they have to work harder because they're using something they've never used before. But to your point, you know, the acute variables that, you know, so when we talk about acute variables, just as a recap, your reps, your sets, your tempo, all of that shouldn't change, you know, because again, hopefully you are following the model itself and that phase serves a specific goal. And if you want to use some of these tools within those phases, that's when you are going to see the best results. And so, you know, we've heard about burnout, and I feel like I'm doing the same thing over and over again. Well, you know, hopefully when we start talking about some of these new products and you start thinking about what's out there, you can change up what you're doing, the exercises that you're choosing, and, you know, be more creative, but it needs to make sense. And that's the big thing. I can't say enough. It has to make sense. So that's That's the big thing. And, so we're going to talk about some of the ones that are out there on the market. Again, Marty and we don't get anything for this. We're not, it's not a plug for one particular product. It was just some of the stuff that we liked and that, I'm starting to implement or think about implementing, or, any of that when we go through some of this. So just keep that in mind. This is not a plug for these products. We're just talking about the ones that we like.
Yep. So when we look at the considerations, this is just a couple. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Like, just because there's a tool out there doesn't mean it's the perfect tool for every single person. But again, we encourage you to look at modifications and progressions and regressions, because it is nice to have a diversity in your training. And then this is similar to my second rule, Wendy, that you've heard me say 1,000 times. It has to make sense to your clients and their needs. So I give them what they want while I give them what they need, but don't just do it. And I've seen that a lot with fitness tools too. It's like they, come back from a workshop or they go to a conference, and then everyone gets that modality. And it's like, well, it may not fit for everybody. But
You mean there's not a workout of the day that you're doing with every single client, Marty? Come on now.
Oops, I'm not supposed to do that. No. And then again, my third rule, have fun, right? So fun, spice things up. And again, I said this when I was over across the season and other workshops. It's okay to make things look Instagrammable if it makes sense to your programming. There's nothing wrong with that, because you are marketing yourself. You are keeping people interested. You are having fun with the workouts. But if Wendy and I showed up, we could say, oh, I know exactly what phase of training they're doing, because we could see through that. So that's all we're asking for, is be creative, but just make sure that it follows the right progressions.
Yeah. And, it needs to be safe, guys. I mean, that's why we always say too, can someone do an exercise without compensation? And, can they keep the right speed? Can they keep the right tempo? Can they maintain the proper 5 kinetic chain checkpoints? And if you can answer yes to all the above, then you know that you're on the right track. And by the time, let's say they're in phase 1, then you're going to be able to say, okay, I want you to do 12 reps. If they could do 13, it's too light. Maybe you change it up. If they could only do 10 without their form breaking, it was too heavy and you need to change it up. And so again, thinking about when we go through some of this stuff, progressions and regressions, and does that make sense? And so I think, as we go through some of this, just keep that in the back of your mind. I mean, one of them is really not like a product that you're going to use. It's just something to think about when you're thinking about your business. But, I think everyone's got a place, and I think the products on the market are all great. But to your point, Marty, it doesn't serve everyone, and you want to definitely be careful.
Yes. And for those of you just joining us today, I'm Marty Miller here with Wendy Batts on our Master Instructor Roundtable. And we are talking about new fitness tools that you can utilize through all the different phases of training.
Yes. So why don't we just jump right on in?
Absolutely.
So this I thought was really cool. And, this is someone that has come up with a lot of different types of modalities and has implemented a lot of different things that maybe you're familiar with in the industry. But one of the latest things that he has done was the escape barrow. And if you guys think about like a sled push, it's basically a sled push with a farmer carry combo. And one thing that I loved about this is that you could do it indoors or outdoors. Like the way that it's made, it actually has the platform that you could use it on either one of them. And it challenges your body in a lot of different ways. So, Marty is really big. And I know one of the things we're going to talk about is grip strength in the future, because it does serve such a huge, important component of everyday activity. But you're also utilizing your core, your hips, your legs, your arms. I mean, you name it. It's truly a full body workout. And there's a lot of different variations that you can do. Of course, you can load it with external weights, or you can just use the sled itself. It depends if you're trying to do speed work or more strength work. And again, one of the things Marty and I focus on very often, and we're big advocates for triple flexion and triple extension, because that is an everyday movement pattern of what you're doing when you're walking, running, or doing anything where you actually have to get on your tiptoes or push off of something. And so I thought this one was pretty cool. If you haven't seen it, there's a bunch of different videos about it. I think, it is a tool. Is it something you're probably going to have in your house? No. But if you own your own business and you have room and you want to do something a little bit different and you are a fan of these, then maybe it's something to consider, to see if it fits within your programming.
Yeah, and it can be used also for metabolic conditioning too. So there's a lot of just different ways how you want to utilize it. And again, we're going to show you a certain tool, but some of these tools can fit within categories. So we weren't going to grab every single one. So as Wendy had mentioned earlier, this is just her and I figuring out what we want to talk about, no plug whatsoever. So you will recognize some of these products, and there could be another version of it as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like I said, most of us have seen sled push. This combo I thought was pretty interesting, and the fact that you could use it indoors or outdoors, and just, you know, I actually learned about it from when I went to Germany. This was something that one of the trainers, you know, just showed me. We used it. I'm like, man, this thing's great. And he's like, yeah, it just came out on the market. I love it. And I'm like, teach me your ways, because again, I'm always learning too. And I think that's the big thing and why we do this. We should always be learning. And, you know, and the more that I can learn about certain products, I can decide, does this work for me? Does it work for my clients? Is it something I want to invest in? And then I have to determine that based on longevity. So there you have it.
Now, this is one that I've used in the past, similar products, but, you know, I like the Blaze Pod. So Wendy, I'll jump in first. I'd love to hear your take on it as well. But, you know, I like to get people to react. And as you've heard me say, Wendy, and everybody else, everybody's an athlete. So yes, when you look at some of the advertisements for these type of products, you see people moving very quickly. But again, that's on a spectrum, just like the model is: stability, strength, power. That it's going to look different for everybody, but the scientific principles do not change. In life, we need to see stimulus and respond to it. So these are great ways to break up the training, not just do resistance training. We do movement, we do reactive training. There's a little bit of cognitive training in here as well. So there's a lot of different ways to use these types of devices. You know, they're not going to go away. I think they're just going to continue to grow in use. So there's a lot of different things you can do. This one here, you can see you have a 40-meter device to the pod range. So there's countless different things that you can do with that type of range. I've even, Wendy, for some of my senior athletes, had it up like on a counter, and they're not even moving more than just shifting their body left and right, because that's what they can control. So it doesn't have to be anything crazy. It can be very simplistic, but getting someone also to do these type of things under fatigue, I think, is phenomenal. When you can do a little cardio and your attention span, your reaction time is down a little bit, but that's real life as well. This is phenomenal for youth, and they love to play, right? So it's not always just about sets and reps. It's about interacting and playing. And it's a great way to get somebody to move three-dimensionally where they may not want to move. And when those lights start to go, they're going to move a little quicker than they normally would. So it helps people move and progress maybe a little more than like traditional training techniques.
Yeah. And again, it depends, you know, it depends on the device. We're just showing this one particularly, but there are some that are out there that you can set like different colors, and they're on, you know, you set them out in different patterns, and you have to remember the patterns. And like when they change colors, and it's like running and stopping and starting. And to your point, Marty, you know, changing directions quickly. And it's actually really fun. You know, the first time I did it, I felt like I was doing Simon Says. You guys remember? I don't know. Maybe
you're dating yourself.
But my son, I just bought one for him because it's good for his brain. You have to think about what colors and what's the pattern. And, you know, and so, you know, this is actually doing it with your feet and your hands and moving at different, you know, speeds. But if you are out there working in a park, or you're doing boot camps and you're doing things like you said, Marty, this can be really fun, interactive. A lot of people are moving. You have the space to do it. But I also use this when I was training some seniors as well, because, you know, it's really good stimulation for the brain. And we know that as time, unfortunately, we start kind of, you know, losing it upstairs a little bit. So, you know,
not me.
Well, again, maybe I'm saying my age. And Marty Miller and myself, Wendy Batts, are on today's Master Instructor Roundtable talking about some of the new fitness tools that we have been introduced to that we actually really like. And so hopefully you guys are going to enjoy this. So far, we've talked about just because you can doesn't mean you should. Always make sure that these things make sense. Always use it within the model. That should be kind of your template, and do some plug and play. And we've already discussed the escape barrel, which is like a sled push with a farmer carry kind of combo. We just talked about the Blaze Pod. And Marty, what's next?
Drum roll. So now we've got, like, instead of an ice cream truck, we've got the fitness truck. I kind of like the ice cream truck. Maybe there should be on the back side of it after you work out.
You get your treat. You did your reward.
And nowadays, I'm sure you've seen the healthier, I'm not going to say healthy ice creams. I'm just saying, just whoever owns these, just food for thought, I guess, pun intended. But these mobile businesses, they're very popular now. When I was at IDEA and URSA this year, there's not just one company that's making them. You have choices. There's multiple. So now you don't have to own your own brick and mortar facility. You can have a mobile facility. I've talked to the people that have created these, and they have some really good business plans that they can share with you on how people are doing it. But now you can, take it to your clients so they can come to you. You can offer multiple types of programming, weight, group, boot camps, etc. And once again, it's fun. So if you truly want to own your own facility, you can think, again, I guess pun intended, outside the box, and maybe look at this as I just couldn't help myself, a more feasible, those are like dad jokes, right? A more feasible option.
So bad. So bad.
It was right there. Right? You had to, right? Anyways, get me back on track here. So it's something different. And, I think COVID helped create a need. And I think that some of these things are going to continue onward. So I think it's a great entry point, and maybe down the line people own multiple, and they cover a very larger geographical area. So I find them very interesting. And like I said, there's more than one choice out there.
Well, and I think one of the key points too, when you're thinking about these, mobile fitness centers or pods, if you will, I mean, they actually have pods where they don't move, and you kind of rent space, and it could be in a parking lot. It could be at a park. It could be something where that stays and you lock it up. And then when you have your sessions, you open it up, and it, like to your point, Marty, it's outdoors, there's more space. If you do need to move it for, just for whatever reason that may be, it's easy to move these along. I've seen people actually build out like vans and trucks where it's actually mobile, and they drive to different people's places and do some of their actual, workouts. And it's fun. I mean, it's just different. And if you're not sure, because I know even on our Facebook page, we hear people say, I don't know, I want to do it in my garage. But then again, I need to park my cars there. Or my wife or husband isn't really a big fan of that because, or if you live in really hot climates, or in Atlanta where it is sticky and humid, you may want to have more open space and air versus being inside like a garage type thing. So again, we have some really good friends out there that have been doing this. I know, again, there were some people that I met from South Africa that were putting together pods to bring fitness into some different areas where fitness isn't really a thing. People can't really afford it. So they're doing it kind of as their philanthropy, which I found fascinating. And, and all I can say is good for them, because what, everyone needs fitness at some, and fitness is different from, for everyone. So I can't say my definition is the same as Marty's, even though the outcome is to have a healthy life, and be able to live as long as possible and be able to move as long as possible. So, it's just something to consider. Again, this isn't necessarily a tool, but it is a consideration of new things that are out there that are really starting to become more and more popular.
Yeah, and you could call this new fitness trends as well, right? But even those trends are still going to fit within the model. So,
yes.
This one I like. I don't know if you've used one yet, Wendy. I did play with them a little bit at the trade shows. Haven't worked out fully with them, but it's just another unique version of a kettlebell. It's just a little bit longer handle. The weight's obviously further from where you could potentially hold it. It's kind of cool looking, of course. I'm a guy, maybe the Thor hammer, like a superhero. I'm
learning more and more about you on this podcast, Marty. So yeah, keep it going.
Right. But as I'm, doing my superhero stuff, obviously there's a reason. It's not just because it's cool looking, as we talked at the very beginning, but there is an increased muscular activation, right? If I'm holding something from the handle and there's a big weighted head to that, obviously it's going to take the same amount of weight, is going to require more muscle activation. So even though it's cool and fun looking, you're getting a different response from the muscular system if you did the same type of thing with a dumbbell in the same movement pattern. So increased focus, so kind of shift back to paying attention to what you're doing. Definitely after Optima, you'll see why I'm such a big fan of grip strength. And then these can be used for muscular coordination, metabolic conditioning, all the above. So again, if you have kettlebells you will be able to do some of the very similar exercises, but this is just a little bit longer of a handle. So it just creates more distribution of the weight over a longer period. So it is more challenging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what I'm finding more and more about it, and one of the things we didn't even put on here too, I know that now there's new companies that have like cinder blocks and different types of equipment like that, where you can hold different handles and move things around, and, you can step on things. So, when we're looking at something like this, I find it, I find it very interesting, because to your point, sometimes with the kettlebell, it is just specifically easier to do with one hand. And some of the stuff now with the longer handle kind of changes the game and what you can and can't do. And you can still work in all three planes of motion. You can swing things in different direction. You can have the heavy part down, heavy part up. You can actually have it sideways when you're doing different rotational to add movement or more weight on one side where you're moving it back and forth. And so I like to your point, it kind of increases the activation in different areas that a kettlebell may not be able to do as easy. But at the end of the day, it's another tool that you would definitely want to get yourself familiar with first. Use it, play with it, and Marty, I'm guessing too, because I haven't, played with these enough, that they come in different sizes and weights.
Yep. Yeah. Nope. Wendy, you got to start right with a 50-pound Thor hammer.
Hey, you know what? Bring it on.
You can do it. You can do it. But the other thing too, where it's nice to have a lot of tools, is because people, like, we know, and Wendy, we could go through another podcast with this, is, I've had clients where they're like, we did that exercise last time. And I want to say, well, yeah, you're still not good at it yet. Right. So I have to give them I'm just being honest, right? Like, I wouldn't say that to them, but you and I aren't going to change the exercise just because they come a different day. So what we do is we have the same patterning with maybe a different version of it. Right. So to them, it's a different exercise. So one day someone might use a kettlebell. One day someone might use the Thor hammer. We know what we're trying to accomplish, but the more tools that we have to our, in our repertoire, the person doesn't get into that. Well, we did that exercise last time. Or they may really focus on something. Like if you have someone like me, I'm like, no, I'm not ready to change that because I need to get better at this. So it's a great way to really dive in deep with it and have that extra tool in a sense. So that way you get the best out of your client's training experience, depending on how they view things.
Yeah. And one other thing to comment on that, Marty, often, we'll go into, let's say we're doing a frontal plane lunge for the first time, and, their feet kept turning out when they were lunging to one side or going to the other, or they were, we were really focusing on form. And then let's say, another week later, we go back into that. And now I put a different modality, let's say in their hand. It's still the exact same lower body exercises, but I'm adding some extra weight, especially something like that, where, it's not an equal weight distribution in both hands. So it does add more complexity to that actual exercise, where you're getting more activation. They have to rethink about exactly what they're doing, but you've taught them the patterning and the lower body movement pattern. And so again, another way to advance the exercise by just putting something in their hand now that maybe you hadn't done before. And, if you're just joining Marty Miller and myself, Wendy Batts, today on the Master Instructor Roundtable, we're talking about new fitness tools and, what we've seen lately on the market, and what we've had access, or the ability to talk to some of these creators, as well as people in the industry, of what they're using. We've talked about, you determining what's best for you and your clients. But we've already, gone over the escape barrel. We've gone over the the mobile truck.
The truck.
Yep. We did the Blaze pods. Now we're talking about the Thor kettlebells. And one of the last but not least ones that we're actually going to talk about is the Flywheel.
Yeah, so, I'm a big fan of this because if you know how to use it properly, again, I don't want things just because they're Instagrammable, is eccentric training is great. And a variable resistance is great. So what happens when you pull on that flywheel, the faster you pull, the more it's going to pull you back eccentrically. So there's a coordination element to it. We can safely implement eccentric training, but because it's trying to pull me, because I'm attached to it either from a belt or a handle, there's a huge part of coordination there. If I'm just laying on a bench press, I can almost just let the weight drop. Where here, if I'm standing up and doing rows, you can really get that, from the feet all the way up, a lot of muscle contraction. And people need to learn how to eccentrically load. And they also need to be able to pick up and have power as they pull harder or, come out of the squat faster. And the more you do it, the more you get the eccentric. So you get that coordination where you start to sense what your body can control. So it's kind of fun that way, where you can really have that variable resistance. If I move slow, it's going to pull me down slow in this version. If I move faster, it's going to pull me faster. So there's a lot of coordination to it. But it's a great new stimulus that a lot of people aren't used to. It's good for strength. It's good for power. And there is a skill to it for sure.
It is. The first time I did one of these, I was like, oh, how hard is it? And they didn't like put a lot of weight on it. So I'm like, oh, of course, me being a trainer, I'm like, I got this. And it was super challenging. The first time I did it was super challenging. And to your point, it is way different, Marty, than anything that you're going to get from like a cable, because a cable is different and to where you're standing. Even if you're like, let's say, utilizing the kinesis and you're holding on to something that's right beside you, it will pull you down, but it's just different because of the way that the flywheel is attached to that particular weight. And to your point, as you move faster, it's going to have more kind of like drag and pull, if you will. And I am a very big fan of the flywheels for sure.
So are you kind of hinting that there's different types of resistance?
Yes.
Well, then you're going to have to tune into my Optima session on resistance profiles. Great plug, shameless plug for me at Optima, but we will do a recap after Optima on the Master Instructor Roundtable. But that's why we brought this one up, because resistance is not always the same. There are new tools out there, but you have to understand the resistance you're applying. You can't just grab stuff and go with it if you don't understand the stimulus, how to teach it, how to control it, and where to program it for sure.
Yeah. And, there are so many different places out there that have a lot of these different fitness tools too. So if you get a chance to go and try some of these out on your own, or even join some of these conferences that, these people have booths where they bring the equipment, they allow you to play with it and try it. Again, it's great for networking. I know that Ursa was a huge hit, as well as Idea World. And again, if you went to Ideal World, you guys would have seen Dr. Rick Ritchie won our 2022 Personal Trainer of the Year. So congratulations to him. But, it really is an unbelievable networking, a place to really meet some great people, but then also see kind of what's out there on the market and see what's good for you and your business.
Without a doubt. So that's part of growing as a professional, is networking. And you and I have talked about this before, investing your time and your resources to grow. I know you and I have talked about this. People get sometimes frustrated that they need continuing education or they have to do this, but if you plan it out and you do it well, that's how you grow as a professional. So, I think a conference once a year, once every other year, you have to get outside of your little network and be, see what else is out there, because just because you're living in your fitness bubble and you have the internet, that's not the same as going and meeting people, talking to people, and trying things. So I highly encourage, people to plan for these type of experiences. And usually people come back very excited.
Yes. And basically the key takeaways on our Master Instructor Roundtable with Wendy Batts and Marty Miller on the fitness tools is it's always good to review what is on the market. Look what's out there and see, are these new tools or modalities, whichever way you want to call it, does it make sense for you and your business? Is it something, like Marty just said, that you want to invest in? Most of these things that we discussed today, as well as most of the tools that are out there on the market, do have education that surrounds it. So it really does teach you, the proper ways to utilize the equipment and do's and don'ts. So make sure that you go through that. And just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I say that's kind of like my motto. And then if you should, I want to know the rationale to why. And, and I think that's what makes you a good trainer. Always know the whys, always have the rationale of why you're implementing it. Because if a client asks you, without hesitation, you should be able to respond to that answer. But most importantly, you need to be the first one to try it. Just like Marty and I have said about the OPT model, it's extremely important that you go through each and every phase. You really go through the acute variables and understand how difficult it is when done correctly. Same thing when you're implementing new tools into your program. Make sure you understand things that if you don't hold it right, this could happen, or, you know, if I do it this way, wow, that really did increase this, you know, the amount of load I'm using when I hold it at a 90-degree angle versus close to my body, or, you know, shift it side to side, or whatever it may be. So just make sure too that you play around with all this stuff before you just say, hey, let's try this. I just bought it. I think it's cool. Why don't you try it? Let me know what you think.
Right. And, you know, the other way we said is you're your first client. And Wendy, when we hold our workshops in the past, we always say, tell, show, do. You tell someone what you're going to do, you show them. Doesn't mean it's the same way, but you should show them and then you have them do it. So I think this is great advice. And Wendy, how can these amazing people get a hold of you?
Yes, if you guys have any questions, comments, or any ideas that you would love for Marty and I to talk about, please feel free to email me at wendy.batts@nasm.org, or you can find me on Instagram at wendy.batts13.
Awesome. And of course, our amazing producer, Eric's going to put mine up here right on cue as always. My Instagram is dr.martymiller72, and then my email is marty.miller@nasm.org. So Wendy, I think that was, hopefully people found some new ideas and maybe some things that maybe they're, you know, kind of always doing the same thing, that maybe they should go look at some of these tools, but always bring them back to the model.
Always. Good advice.
There we go. So on that, thank you all so much for attending this week's Master Instructor Roundtable. We look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.